Her grandson called her a guest in the house she built. Evelyn Blake, widow and original deed holder, didn't argue. Her daughter laughed. Her son-in-law talked refinancing. By morning, their names were off the lease, and a new trust had claimed full legal ownership. She'd once welcomed them in out of love. Now, she was their landlord. And when they tried to erase her from her own home, she gave them 30 days to remember whose name still owned the door. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence. It lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Family breakfast at the long dining table. It was one of those mornings where the coffee tasted too thin and the silence between words felt just a little too loud. The long walnut dining table, polished to a mirror sheen, was cluttered with ceramic plates, lukewarm eggs, and the kind of tension only family can serve without saying much at all. Evan was slouched 2 chairs down, scrolling on his phone between bites of toast. Richard sat at the head, reading the paper like it was still 1995, chewing slow and deliberate. Across from me, Tara refilled her coffee without looking up. Then Evan laughed, not even looking my way. "Grandma," he said, grinning, "you're just a guest here anyway." I set my fork down, carefully. Not loud, not dramatic, just a pause. Richard chuckled. Actually chuckled, and turned the page of his paper like it was nothing. I looked at him, but he didn't meet my eyes. "A guest, am I?" I said softly, glancing at the crown molding I had picked out 22 years ago, before Tara even married him. "That's an interesting perspective." Tara gave a light little scoff and waved her hand like she was brushing off a speck of lint. "He's just joking. Don't be so sensitive, Evelyn." I gave her the kind of smile women like me are trained to give. Thin, contained. Polite enough not to scare anyone, but inside something shifted. Not a spark. A slow burn. They think I'm passing through. A shadow at my own table. They forget whose name this house still carries. Evan went back to his phone. Richard sipped his coffee. No one asked if I was okay. After breakfast, I cleared my own plate. No one offered to help, of course. Tara was already on her laptop at the end of the table, tapping away at emails like a good little CEO of her boutique soap empire. Evan disappeared upstairs. Richard had already gone out to the back patio to water his tomatoes, his pride and joy since retirement. I went up to my room. Not my room, the way a guest has one, but the room that used to be mine before my husband died and my daughter moved her family into the house I built with him. At first, it was temporary, they said, but temporary has a way of growing roots when people get comfortable. That afternoon, no one knocked. No one checked in. And that night, once the house was dark and still, I moved quietly down the hallway to the study. The one room no one ever enters but me. I closed the door behind me, locked it. The key was where I always kept it, tucked into the hem of a framed photo of my wedding day. My hand hesitated a second before reaching for the drawer beneath the old roll-top desk. It stuck a little. The wood swelled in the heat, like it always had. I leaned my weight into it until it gave. Inside, wrapped in a piece of silk I'd had since my mother's time, was the deed. The original one. Hand-signed. My name listed first. Evelyn S. Harper, sole owner. Before the refinancing. Before Richard took over the mortgage. Before Tara started referring to it as our home. My fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. It had creases where I'd unfolded and folded it again over the years, just to remind myself. They want to forget, but I haven't. Not the money I put down. Not the sleepless nights building this place from dust. Not the weight I carried through every year while Richard worked late and Tara grew into a version of herself I barely recognize. Guessed? That word again. I slid the deed into a new folder. One that wouldn't draw suspicion. I tucked it into my tote, right beneath a crossword book and a cardigan, like any sweet old grandmother would. Then I unlocked the bottom drawer of the desk. Inside, a slim envelope I'd hidden for years. Inside that, a card, a name, Reuben Keller, attorney at law. He owed me a favor, and I was ready to collect. Richard starts talking about modernizing the house. The next morning, I came down early. The house was still quiet, heavy with that pre-wake stillness that only exists before everyone starts pretending to like each other again. I made my own coffee, real coffee, not the pod sludge Tara swears by, and stood at the window watching the fog burn off the grass. For a moment, I could almost remember when this house was mine in spirit as well as law. Before Richard filled it with his heavy leather chairs and Evan's loud music. Before Tara's eucalyptus-scented ambition soaked into the walls. He came in just after 7, carrying his garden gloves in one hand and humming some old Springsteen tune, a little too loud for that hour. "Morning," he said, wiping sweat off his brow and helping himself to my coffee without asking. I said nothing, just watched as he poured, slopped some into the saucer, then settled at the table like a man completely at home. "We've been thinking," he said, gesturing vaguely with his mug. "Maybe it's time to modernize a little." I turned toward him, slow and deliberate. "Modernize." "Yeah," he said. "Freshen up the kitchen, maybe knock down that wall by the study, open things up a bit, you know, make it more current." I leaned one hip against the counter. "Interesting?" He didn't notice the tone. Men like Richard rarely do. "We might even refinance," he added casually, like we were discussing the weather. "Get some cash out, reinvest. Prices are strong right now." I sipped my coffee, let the silence stretch. Then, "You'll have to talk to the owner first." He looked at me like I was joking. "I'm the owner," he said, chuckling. "Don't be cute." I just raised an eyebrow, held his gaze, said nothing. It took a beat longer than it should have, but something flickered in his expression. Not fear. He's not that self-aware, but confusion, maybe. A shadow of uncertainty. He opened his mouth like he might push it further, but thought better of it. Instead, he tapped the side of his mug, then stood. "Anyway," he muttered, "just a thought." He left the room without finishing his coffee. That afternoon, I baked. Not because anyone deserved cookies, but because I needed the rhythm of it, the measuring, the control. While the oven preheated, I heard the screen door creak open. Martha's voice floated in, warm and familiar. "If you're hiding from your family, I brought wine." I turned, genuinely smiling for the first time in days. Martha had been my neighbor for 2 decades. She'd moved to Arizona last year to be near her grandkids, but she was back in town for a funeral and instinctively knew where to find me, right where they'd left me. We sat on the porch with glasses in hand, feet tucked under us like girls again. "I swear," she said, shaking her head, "they don't even try to pretend anymore." "They're not cruel," I said. "No," she agreed, "just entitled." I nodded slowly. "They're taking liberties." Martha looked at me over the rim of her glass. "And what are you going to do?" I turned toward the street, watching the leaves shake in the breeze. "I'm going to take control." She smiled then, slow and sharp. "About damn time." As the sun dipped lower, I walked her out. Before she got into her rental car, she reached into her purse and pressed something into my hand. A silver business card holder. Her late husband's. "Use it if you need," she said. "There's still a few favors left in there." I stood on the porch long after she pulled away, running my thumb across the embossed initials on the case. When I turned to go back inside, the door was cracked open. Evan stood there, phone in hand, watching me. "Who is that?" he asked. "An old friend," I said. He squinted. "You're up to something." I stepped past him into the hall, my voice calm and even. "Yes," I said. "I am." And I didn't bother to close the door behind me. Evelyn visits Clara Ruiz's office downtown. Downtown had changed since I last had business there. The old bakery where I used to take Tara for cookies after piano lessons was now a sleek vegan cafe with windows too clean and tables too close together. Everyone looked busy, like they were playing roles they weren't entirely sold on. I found Clara Ruiz's name still etched on the third-floor glass door of an aging brick building that hadn't bowed to modern pressure. Good. She hadn't moved up or out. She was exactly where I needed her to be. The receptionist barely looked up. "Have a seat. She's finishing up." The waiting area smelled like lemon polish and old paper. There was something comforting in that. Real work happened in places that didn't apologize for being lived in. A moment later, the door opened. "Evelyn Harper," Clara said, smiling like she meant it. "Well, aren't you a memory in heels?" I stood. "And you're still calling it like it is." She led me back to her office. Floor-to-ceiling files. No pretense, just competence. We'd gone to the same church for a while, years ago. I knew her reputation. Smart. Discreet. No appetite for mess, but not afraid of it either. "You said this was sensitive," she said as she closed the door. "It is," I replied, settling into the chair opposite her desk. "I need to confirm something before I act." She slid a yellow legal pad in front of her, clicked her pen. "Go on." I handed her the manila folder with the deed. She unfolded it carefully. "I had it verified once," I said. "But I want the most current standing. I need to know if anything's changed in the last 10 years. She scanned the pages, lips pressed in focus, then turned to her monitor, tapped out a few keys, and pulled up the property records database. "Still under Evelyn S. Harper," she said, reading from the screen. "You never filed a quitclaim. No joint tenancy added. No trust changes." She glanced at me. "You hold sole ownership from the transfer your husband made before passing. It's clean. It's yours." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Then they've built arrogance on assumption." Clara raised an eyebrow. "They?" "My daughter. Her husband. They've been treating me like a guest in my own home, like a burden." "And you're ready to remind them?" "Not yet," I said, shaking my head. "I don't want a scene. Not until I'm ready." She studied me a beat, then nodded. "Would you like to keep it quiet?" "For now. Let them talk. I'll move silently." She tapped the end of her pen against the desk. "You could draw up a lease. Private. Between you and them. Wouldn't be public unless enforced. It'd put you in control. Officially." I smiled. "If they want to live like tenants, we'll make it official." Clara went to work quickly. Within minutes, she had a draft open on her screen. The language was professional but firm. Evelyn S. Harper as landlord, Richard and Tara Matheson as tenants. Month to month, revocable at her discretion. No rent required, yet, but expectations clearly outlined. Upkeep, conduct, usage of property assets. It wasn't spiteful, it was structural. "You can hold this," Clara said, printing 2 copies. "Notarized or not, it's legal. If they push you, you'll have leverage. If you decide to enforce it, we can serve it clean. I folded the document and slid it into the same tote where the deed now lived, nestled beneath my crossword book and the cardigan I never wore. On my way out, Clara placed a hand on mine. You waited long enough. I nodded. I don't want to fight. No, she said. You want your house back. The elevator was slow, humming with a soft mechanical whine. I wrote it down alone. Outside, I stood in the shadow of the courthouse across the street. The same place where Richard and I had signed our wills. The same building where, someday soon, I might return. Not with sentiment, but with strategy. As I stepped toward the crosswalk, my phone buzzed. A message from Evan. Where are you? Dad's freaking out. He thinks you're hiding something. I stared at the screen, smiled, then typed back, tell him I'm just getting some things in order. And hit send. Evan throws a party while Evelyn's asleep. Loud music, strangers in her house. It started with the bass. Not the kind you hear, the kind you feel, thudding through the floorboards like distant thunder. I woke in the dark, the room pulsing around me. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. But no, there it was again. Louder now. Music. Voices. Laughter. I slipped out of bed and pulled my robe tight, feet finding their way down the hallway on muscle memory. The closer I got to the stairs, the clearer it became. Not just Evan, but a full crowd. Strangers. In my house. When I reached the landing, the smell hit me. Cheap beer. Cologne. Something vaguely herbal burning in the air. There were people everywhere. Some lounging on the staircase like they'd paid for entry, others shouting across the living room over the pounding beat of whatever song Evan thought made him look cool. One girl, barely older than Evan, was perched on the edge of my coffee table, feet kicked up on a stack of family photo albums. I scanned the room, and there he was, Evan, holding a red plastic cup, laughing like he was king of the damn castle. I stepped down slowly. No shouting. No scene. Evan, I said calmly, turn the music off. He didn't hear me, or pretended not to. I moved toward the stereo, reached past some boy who barely registered me, and turned the dial until the room deflated into silence. Now they noticed me. Party's over, I said. Everyone out. There was a murmur of confused rebellion, but Evan stepped forward. Mouth twisted. Why do you care? You were asleep. Before I could answer, Richard stormed in from the den, red-faced, eyes already narrowed. What the hell is going on? I turned to him. Your grandson threw a party in my house, without asking. He looked at Evan, then back at me. He's young. Let him enjoy his home. I tilted my head. His? I repeated, quiet, pointed. How generous of me. That made Richard bristle. He opened his mouth again, but Tara appeared at the bottom of the stairs, her silk robe tied like armor, eyes tired but sharp. What's going on? She said. She's kicking everyone out, Evan snapped. Tara sighed. Mom, it's just a few kids. Strangers, I corrected. In my house, past midnight. Tara rubbed her temples. If you don't like the way things are run around here, maybe you should find a place of your own. The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was surgical. I looked at her. Really looked. And something inside me fell perfectly, frighteningly into place. Maybe I should, I said. I walked past them all. No one moved to stop me, not even Richard. I stepped into the study and shut the door behind me, sat at the desk. Hands still steady. This wasn't rage. This was clarity. I pulled out my phone and scrolled until I found Martha's number. She picked up on the second ring. Evelyn? They've made their position clear, I said. It's time to make mine. Martha didn't hesitate. You want me to call Clara? No, I said. Not yet. Then what? Prepare the papers. Quietly. Lease enforcement. Notice rights. I want every exit mapped. Every nail in place before the floor gives out beneath them. Martha exhaled. You're serious? I'm done letting them live like squatters in a home they didn't earn. There was a long pause. Then, all right, Evelyn, let's get to work. I hung up, still seated in the dark. Outside the study door, the living room had gone quiet. I heard the front door shut once, then again, then again. Guests scattering like startled mice. Eventually, only the house remained. My house. I opened the desk drawer, took out the lease Clara had drafted, smoothed it flat on the desk and pressed my hand against it. Then I reached for a pen. Evelyn holds a family meeting. It's easy to silence a room when no one expects the voice to come from you. That morning, I set the table, not with breakfast, but with intention. No coffee, no eggs. Just 4 chairs and a manila envelope placed squarely in the center of the walnut surface they'd all stopped seeing as mine. I called them down one by one, calm, even-toned, like I was organizing a holiday menu. Richard grumbled about his tomato plants. Tara asked if it could wait until after her morning client call. Evan didn't bother looking up from his phone, but eventually, they all came. Curiosity always did what respect refused to. I waited until they were seated. Let the silence hang. Then I slid the envelope across the table and unfolded the deed. Clean, crisp. Older than Evan, but still sharp at the edges. The kind of paper that cuts if you mishandle it. Read the signature, I said quietly. Richard leaned forward, blinking like the words might rearrange themselves into something more comfortable. His voice, when it came, was a dry rasp. This can't be right. Oh, but it is, I said, folding my hands. It's been right since 1987. Tara let out a laugh, sharp, brittle, too high. You're joking. Your father and I had this house built with cash we didn't have and hope we borrowed from the future. He transferred full ownership to me before he died. We never changed that. But we've lived here, Richard started. On good faith, I said. Mine. The silence cracked under Tara's voice. You tricked us. I turned my head toward her slowly. No, you assumed. And assumptions, I said, lifting the second document and placing it beside the deed. Have rent. She stared at the lease like it was poison. Richard pushed back from the table. You're going to charge us to live here? No, I replied. Not yet. But you will sign that lease, month to month. At my discretion. And if it's not signed by the end of the week, I'll begin formal notice. Evan's jaw moved, but nothing came out. He looked like a boy suddenly aware of the house around him for the first time. That it had bones. That those bones weren't his. I've never heard of someone doing this to their own family, Tara hissed. No, I said. Because most families don't need it spelled out. Richard stood fully now, his hand flattening on the table. You're overreacting. Was I overreacting when you called this Evan's home? I asked. When Tara suggested I find another place to live. That was a misunderstanding, he muttered. No, I said. It was an erasure, and it ends here. For a moment, no one moved. Even the air seemed to sit heavier. Then Tara stood, jaw clenched. We need to talk, she said to Richard, voice low. Privately. I stood too. Take all the time you need, but the papers stay here. She started to speak again but stopped when I didn't flinch. They filed out of the room. one by one, like people who just realized the locks had changed. I remained at the table, letting the echo of it all settle into the wood grain. I wasn't angry. I wasn't triumphant. I was free. I reached for my tote, slid the documents back inside. There would be fallout, of course. Noise. Denial. But this wasn't about making them pay. It was about making them aware. Later that afternoon, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and the phone resting on my knee. It buzzed once. A text from Martha. "How'd it go?" I typed back. "They finally heard me." Then I paused. "Now let's make it legal." Richard tries to argue legal technicalities, but Clara shuts him down. "It's airtight." They brought their lawyer to Clara's office, which told me everything before a word was spoken. Some mid-tier estate guy, sweaty, impatient, the kind who bills by the hour and knows it. He didn't look at me when we sat down, just opened his folder and started tossing around words like probate, revocation, and equitable occupancy, like they were spells meant to undo history. Clara let him finish, then leaned forward, slow, hands folded. "It's airtight," she said. He blinked. "Excuse me?" "The deed was never altered. Ownership was never transferred. The lease is private, legal, and enforceable. You'd lose this in court before you found parking." Richard shifted beside me, arms crossed like he could barrel through facts with posture alone. "I've invested in that house for years." Clara turned to him. "And yet you never asked whose name was on the title." Tara was sitting stiff across from me, her arms folded tight, face drawn like someone holding in a scream. And Evan, he was in the corner, hunched and sulking, AirPods dangling around his neck like an identity badge. He muttered something under his breath. "What was that?" I asked, gently. He didn't meet my eyes. "Just, whatever. Old people and loopholes." I smiled, not unkindly. "Respect isn't a loophole, dear. It's an asset. You trade on it, or you go bankrupt." He rolled his eyes and went back to his phone. That was fine. I wasn't looking for apologies anymore, just exits. Tara finally exploded. "You're doing all of this to what? Teach us a lesson? Punish us? Humiliate your family in front of lawyers like this?" Clara cleared her throat professionally. "I didn't humiliate anyone," I said. "You did. The day you stopped treating me like a person. Like the woman who built that home. You've been living rent-free in more ways than one." "You'll destroy this family," Tara said, rising now, eyes gleaming with self-righteousness. "You think this won't leave a scar? You think Evan's going to forget the day his own grandmother tried to evict him?" I stood slowly, letting the weight of the moment settle. "You destroyed this family," I said, "when you started treating it like a stepping stone. When birthdays turned into obligations and kindness turned into currency." Tara stared at me, open-mouthed. But I didn't need her to respond. I'd stopped needing that a long time ago. The meeting wrapped with minimal ceremony. Their lawyer mumbled something about reviewing options. But Clara smiled politely, then locked the file with the kind of finality that says, "There are no options left." We left through the side stairwell, Martha waiting at the curb, driver's side window down, sunglasses perched high like a sentry. She didn't say anything until we were halfway down the block. "You sure you want to stay under the same roof with them?" she asked, her tone more gentle than questioning. I looked out the window. The city was quiet for once, as if it, too, was holding its breath. "Not for long." Martha nodded. "What's next?" "I let them stew," I said, "and then I move." "Out?" "No," I said, smiling. "Them." She laughed then, not with humor, but with recognition. You've always been better at playing the long game than any of them realized. They thought I was sleeping while they took over my house. And I was building the exit plan they never thought I had the guts to use. My phone buzzed. A message from Tara. Please don't do this. Let's talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the folder in my lap, flipped past the lease agreement, to the letter Clara had drawn up this morning at my request. A notice of termination of tenancy. Dated. Signed. Not yet delivered. But it would be. Soon. Evelyn quietly transfers the home to her trust and finalizes a sale agreement to herself via her company. You don't win wars by shouting. You win them by shifting the ground beneath your opponent until they're standing on air. By Thursday morning, the documents were signed. Clara sat across from me in her office, a quiet kind of satisfaction in her posture that didn't need to be spoken aloud. Between us, a newly notarized trust transfer and a clean sale agreement, drafted through the holding company I'd quietly reactivated last year. Harper and Wren, LLC, a name they wouldn't even recognize. I'll record the transfer today, Clara said, tapping the seal with her thumb. You've done it. You've separated the property from their reach completely. Exactly, I said, not looking at the paperwork but out the window, where the fall light was spilling across the courthouse roof. Now there'll be tenants in every sense. No loopholes. No appeals. Clara glanced over the final sale document, adjusted a clause, then slid it into a flat envelope. You've effectively sold the house to yourself through the trust. The LLC becomes the legal owner, and you're both trustee and beneficiary. Then I've finally put this place where it belongs, I said, in my name, under my terms. It wasn't just about control, it was about permanence. For years they chipped away at my place in this home, smothered it in modern furniture, eucalyptus diffusers, and that terrible whitewashed paint Tara insisted made everything look clean. But none of that mattered now. The bones were mine again. On paper, in fact. By evening, the emails were sent, quietly, professionally. One of them was delivered to Richard. I was in the kitchen when he opened it, sitting with a beer he hadn't paid for in a house he still didn't believe wasn't his. He stared at his phone a long time, eyes narrowing. What the hell is this? He read it again, aloud this time. Please update your residency documentation with Harper and Wren Property Management to remain in compliance with lease terms. His voice cracked on the last word. Tara walked in behind him, still in her yoga pants, face flush from a run, or anger. What's she doing now? She asked, grabbing a bottle of water. She's turned herself into our landlord, he said, the words like gravel in his mouth. Tara blinked. Wait, is that legal? It's airtight, he muttered, echoing Clara's words back with bitter irony. That was when I stepped in from the hall, calm as ever, carrying my tea like I'd just come in from a stroll. Yes, I said. I am your landlord now. Tara turned toward me, eyes sharp. You can't be serious. I raised an eyebrow. You could start by paying rent on time. Richard looked up, stunned silent for a beat, then set his phone down slowly like it might explode. I warned you, I said. I told you the papers were real. No, he said. You threatened. No, I replied. I clarified. Tara paced the room like a trapped animal. You don't even want to talk to us now? You just send emails and legal documents? You've spent the last 2 years speaking to me through silence, I said. Now I'm using a language you finally listened to. That silenced her. Evan entered at just the wrong time. Backpack slung, headphones around his neck, taking in the standoff without a word. Is this about that lease thing again? He asked, chewing gum like punctuation. Richard stood up. It's about how we're apparently tenants now. Evan raised both eyebrows. Cool. Does that mean we can break the lease and move out? That landed hard. No one answered. I turned toward the window, watching the sky turn from gold to ash. In my tote, still zipped shut, was the notice of termination. Dated, signed, not yet served. They didn't know it yet. But the countdown had begun. Tara and Richard whisper plans to get her declared incompetent. They think the walls don't have ears. But this house was built before open concepts and hollow core doors, back when plaster held sound like breath in a church. I was in the study, reviewing account statements for the trust when I heard them. Not arguing this time, whispering. Their voices floated through the old floor vent beneath my desk, the one Richard had always meant to replace, but never did. She's not well, Tara said, her voice tight. This obsession, it's not rational. She's clever, not crazy, Richard muttered. And that's the problem. A pause. What if we had her evaluated? Tara asked. Legally, like cognitive decline, early dementia. Even he hesitated at that. I don't know, Tara. That's extreme. She's threatening to evict us, she hissed. She's hiding money, setting up shell companies. What would a court say about that? There was a long silence. Then Richard sighed. Let me talk to Jeff. Quietly. And there it was. Not hurt, not remorse. A plan. I sat still for a long time after the vent went quiet. No rage, no panic. Just the weight of knowing they hadn't just stopped seeing me as family. They'd stopped seeing me as fully human. Later that evening, I told Martha. She nearly spilled her tea. They're going to try to get you declared incompetent? I nodded. That's elder financial abuse, she snapped. You do realize that's a crime, right? We can turn that against them. I shook my head. No, not yet. Evelyn, I want their motives to rot in the sun, not hide in the shade of a courtroom. She leaned back, watching me. You're playing a dangerous game. No, I said. They are. I just know the rules better. That night, the house was unusually quiet. Richard and Tara didn't join for dinner. Evan ordered pizza and vanished into his room, door closed, gaming headset on like a helmet. I stayed at the kitchen table and did my crosswords until the dishwasher hummed to life. Then my phone buzzed. A notification. Evan Harper posted a video. I clicked. He'd filmed it from the front yard. I could see myself in the background, on the porch, watering the geraniums. The caption read, POV, your rich old grandma thinks she owns the place and kicks you out. He panned from the house to himself, grinning. Can someone tell this lady it's 2025, not 1925? Get with it, Nana. I waited for the sting, but it never came. Instead, I scrolled through the comments. Actually, she does own it. You're the freeloader. This woman is my hero. The patience in her posture? Legendary. Respect your elders, bro, especially when they pay the mortgage. A quiet smile crept across my face. I didn't need to defend myself. The world was doing it for me. By morning, the video had over 70,000 views. My neighbor June texted to say she'd seen it and nearly spit out her oatmeal. You look so composed, she wrote. Elegant, even when they mock you. Funny how people don't notice your strength until you wear it in silence. Later, Richard passed me in the hallway, eyes down. Tara didn't speak to me at all. Evan stayed in his room, but the comments kept coming, and the air in the house had changed. Not cleared exactly, more like thickened, tense, waiting. The lines had been drawn. They tried to erase me. Now they were discovering what happens when ink fights back. One morning, Richard and Tara find a certified letter on the porch. The letter came with the frost. It was early, cold enough to fog the windows, quiet enough to hear the hum of the mail truck as it pulled away. I'd been awake since dawn, sipping strong coffee in the kitchen, watching steam curl from the cup like a ribbon of restraint. Tara was the one who opened the front door. She'd come down in her robe to grab the paper, still clinging to her routines like they meant something. I heard her slippers pause against the tile. Then, Richard. No urgency, just a flatness that hinted she already knew. He joined her a few seconds later. I didn't move from my seat. A moment passed, the sound of tearing paper. Then silence. Another moment, then, "You've got to be kidding me." The slam of the screen door. Tara stormed into the kitchen, waving the certified letter in the air like it was on fire. "You can't be serious." She dropped it on the table in front of me. The seal was broken. The words weren't. "Notice to vacate, 30 days, issued by Harper and Wren Property Management, signed, formally, by Evelyn Blake." She couldn't even look at me. "You're evicting us?" she said, voice breaking across the vowels. "You're evicting your own family." I met her eyes, slow and still. "Family respects boundaries. Tenants violate them." Richard walked in, less anger, more disbelief. "This is a bluff." "No," I said. "This is a deadline." He stared at me. "You'd really have us kicked out?" "I offered you a lease. You ignored it. I reminded you. You mocked it." Tara slapped the table. "We didn't mock it." "You called me delusional," I said, not raising my voice. "You plotted to strip me of autonomy. That's not disagreement. That's warfare." Evan stumbled in, bleary-eyed, hair tangled from sleep. "What's going on?" Richard turned to him. "She served us an eviction notice." Evan blinked. "Wait, seriously?" I stayed seated, calm. "Yes, 30 days." Evan's face contorted in a way I hadn't seen since he was a child. Not anger, fear. "You wouldn't dare," he said, voice cracking. I stood. "Watch me." He took a step back like I'd struck him. Richard scoffed. "No judge will allow this. No sheriff will enforce it. We're your family." I slid a second envelope onto the counter. "This one was delivered to the sheriff's office," I said. "Filed, stamped, legal." Tara snatched the document and scanned it with trembling hands. Her lips moved silently over the words. She looked smaller somehow, not younger, just less sure. "We'll fight it," Richard muttered. "Good," I said. "Do it. Nothing would bring me more joy than to stand in court and describe how you tried to have me declared unfit. Let's let a judge decide." The room was silent until the doorbell rang. 3 short knocks followed. I didn't flinch. Richard opened the door, and there he was, Deputy Collins from the county sheriff's office, not in uniform, not aggressive, just official. "Sorry to disturb," he said. "Just here to confirm delivery of a lawful notice. You've got 30 days to vacate unless alternative terms are agreed upon with the property owner." Richard paled. "She's bluffing," he said again. Collins looked at me. "Ma'am, you still planning to follow through?" I nodded once. "Yes." He tipped his hat and handed Richard a small confirmation receipt. "Have a good morning." The door shut behind him with a soft click that felt louder than any slam. Tara sat down, slowly, as if the air had thickened. "She really did it," she whispered. I turned and walked back toward the study, not looking back. On the hallway wall, a family portrait hung crooked. I paused, straightened it gently with 2 fingers. Then I stepped into the room that used to be mine and now was again. In 30 days, it would be quiet, and I would decide who stayed, who returned, if anyone. Richard begs for time. Tara blames everyone but herself. The begging came first. 2 mornings after the notice was delivered, Richard found me in the garden. I was trimming the last of the late hydrangeas, careful to cut just above the node. He cleared his throat like he didn't want to speak first. "I know things got messy," he said. "But 30 days? Come on, Evelyn." I didn't look up. "We've been here for years," he continued. "This is Evan's senior year. We just need some time. More time." I finally straightened, garden shears in hand. "You've had time, Richard, years of it, but you spent it forgetting whose house this is." He flinched. "We'll figure it out," he muttered. "We just need—" "You have 30 days," I said, brushing past him. "Be adults." Inside, Tara was pacing near the kitchen island, arms crossed, eyes narrowed like slits. "You planned this whole thing," she snapped as I entered. "You waited for us to get comfortable, and then you turned on us." "No," I said. "You built comfort on my silence, and then mocked me for keeping quiet." She scoffed. "You wanted us here at first. And I wanted dignity. You didn't leave room for both." Tara's voice cracked. "You're throwing away your own daughter." "No," I said, calm. "I'm giving her 30 days to learn what consequences feel like." I packed lightly, just one small suitcase and my tote. The lakeside property wasn't glamorous. 2 bedrooms, a creaky dock, and chipped paint on the porch railings. But it was mine. Bought 10 years ago when I still believed in backup plans I'd never have to use. I arrived before sunset, lit the fireplace, made tea, watched the water settle into dusk. Alone doesn't feel lonely when it's chosen. 2 days in, Clara came by. She brought fresh bread from a farmer's market and a bottle of wine in a brown bag. No agenda, just presence. She stood at the edge of the dock while I swept the porch. "You look good," she said. "Clear." "It's strange," I said. "It doesn't feel good." She raised an eyebrow. "It feels fair," I corrected. She nodded slowly. "And fair's enough. Sometimes." We ate dinner on the screened-in porch. The wine made the cold easier. Clara left just after dark, headlights disappearing up the gravel drive like a quiet exhale. That night, I opened the Harper & Wren dashboard on my laptop and created a new listing. Charming 5-bedroom colonial, newly available, ideal for working professionals. Private study, hardwood throughout, walkable to local schools and shops. It took 15 minutes. By morning, I had 2 inquiries. One stood out immediately, a couple from Durham. She worked in urban planning. He taught high school literature. No kids, no noise. They'd seen the video Evan posted, they said in their message. "If this is your house," she wrote, "we'd love to live somewhere with that kind of backbone." I reread it twice, then replied to schedule a viewing. Just after I hit send, my phone buzzed again. A message from Richard. "If you're really going through with this, at least talk to Evan. He's scared. He won't admit it, but he is." I stared at the screen. Then I put the phone face down. Sometimes a house has to be emptied to find its shape again. And sometimes the only way to teach someone they don't own a thing is to take it away long enough for them to feel the absence. Richard and Tara's marriage fractures under stress. The house looked different as I pulled into the driveway. Not because anything had changed. Not visibly. But because the energy was off. Like the walls had started to exhale. I'd only been gone a week, but they were already unraveling. The first clue: boxes stacked in the foyer. Not packed with intention, just piled, like they'd argued over what mattered and lost the thread. Through the living room window, I saw Richard sitting alone on the couch, shoulders hunched, holding something in his lap. An old photo album, I realized, the one I'd nearly thrown out before they insisted on keeping it. For memories, they said. Tara was nowhere in sight. I stepped inside without knocking. The air was still thick with heat from last night's arguments. You could smell it in the silence, acrid and dry. He didn't look up, just flipped another page. "She's upstairs," he muttered. I set my keys on the hallway table and walked past him. Their bedroom door was cracked. Tara stood at the edge of the bed, stuffing folded clothes into a duffel bag. Not gently, not thoughtfully, like she was finishing a task she never wanted. "You're back early," she said, without turning. "I own the house," I replied. "I can arrive when I please." She zipped the bag in one fast, angry motion. "This was never supposed to be permanent," she said. "Us living here. And yet you nested like you planned to die here." Tara finally turned to face me. "You broke him," she said. "You embarrassed us. You turned our son against us." "No," I said calmly. "You did that. I just stopped cleaning up after it." Footsteps thundered down the hall. Evan appeared in the doorway with a backpack slung over one shoulder, jaw tight, eyes red. "Don't," he said to both of us. "Just don't." He pushed past me. "Where are you going?" Tara called after him. "Anywhere that's not here," he snapped. "I'm done with both of you." The front door opened, then slammed. The echo rang through the house like a bell no one wanted to hear. Tara's arms dropped to her sides. "Congratulations," she said. "You've turned everyone into ghosts." "No," I said. "I just stopped pretending they were saints." She stared at me. "You'll die alone." I held her gaze. Let the words settle. "Maybe," I said, "but I'll live peacefully." She didn't reply, just picked up the bag and walked out of the room without a sound. I followed slowly, down the stairs, past the boxes, through the living room where Richard hadn't moved. She joined him near the front door. For a moment, neither said anything. Then he finally looked up. "So this is it?" Tara shrugged. "Wasn't it always?" They left without ceremony. No last words, no thank yous. Just the creak of the door and the weight of what never got repaired. I stood alone in the entryway as silence rushed in like a tide. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just listened. To the stillness of a house exhaling shame. Later that evening, Martha arrived with lemon bars wrapped in wax paper and a half-empty bottle of Chardonnay. She didn't ask what happened. She just walked through the rooms with me. Quiet, slow. She stopped in the den, where Richard's old recliner still faced the TV. "They'll regret it one day," she said. I looked at the chair, then the shelf, then the rug they'd insisted on keeping even after I said it clashed with the floors. "That's not my business anymore," I said. Martha nodded. "You going to rent it?" I smiled. "Maybe." We stood there a moment longer, then I picked up the remote and turned the TV off, though it hadn't been on. Evelyn renovates the home. Bright, minimalist, filled with warmth. It started with the floors. Strip the old rug first, the one Tara insisted on, too big and too beige. Beneath it, hardwood waited patiently. Scratched and dulled, yes, but solid, foundational. I had them sanded and stained 2 shades lighter. Then came the walls. No more cold grays or trendy whites. I painted them honey cream, the color of sunlit butter. It made the morning light stretch longer, softer, more honest. Every choice I made was quiet, purposeful, less about taste, more about breadth, space, clean lines, uncluttered corners. I replaced the heavy drapes with sheer linen, swapped oversized furniture for pieces that fit the rooms, not the egos that once sat in them. The house didn't just look different, it felt different, like it had forgiven something. By the end of the second week, I listed it. This time, I was ready to let it hold someone else, someone who wouldn't mistake square footage for inheritance. The inquiries came fast, but one stood out. A young couple, Marcus and Yvette, with a 3-year-old girl and another on the way. He worked at the hospital. She taught music at the local elementary school. We walked the house together. Yvette touched the molding like it meant something. Marcus noticed the refinished baseboards. Their daughter pointed at the window seat and said, "That's where I'll read." They didn't ask if they could paint or renovate. They asked how long they could stay. I told them, "As long as you treat it kindly." They signed the lease 2 days later. When Clara came by to finalize the paperwork, she stepped into the living room and blinked like she wasn't sure it was the same place. "You turned bitterness into income," she said. I smiled. "And loneliness into legacy." She looked at the listing posted on the bulletin board near the entry, at the new name on the lease. Harper and Wren still handled the property, but the trust? That had changed. I showed her the new paperwork, the Blake Renewal Foundation. It was official now. The house's revenue would go toward housing assistance, repairs, temporary shelter grants, down payments for first-time buyers in town. Nothing flashy, just structure for those on the edge. "Think it'll catch?" Clara asked, scanning the mission page on her phone. "Hope so," I said. "But if it helps even one girl get her walls repainted, that's enough." Later that week, I received a letter in the mail, handwritten, folded into thirds. "Dear Mrs. Blake, I just wanted to say thank you for what you did for my aunt's house. She's been struggling to keep it livable, and the day your foundation sent a team to fix the porch steps. She cried. The good kind. We don't know how you heard about her, but I hope you know what it meant. Sophie James, age 14. I sat at the kitchen table holding the letter in both hands. It was written on loose-leaf notebook paper, the kind I used to pack in Tara's school bag. The edges were frayed, the ink smudged in places. It was the most beautiful thing I'd received in years. That night, I stood in the doorway of the study, now staged as a reading room for the new tenants. It was quiet. Not empty. Marcus had already moved in a few books. A framed photo of their daughter sat on the window ledge, smiling into the light. The house was no longer mine in the way it used to be, and that was the point. Evan shows up months later, broke, ashamed. It was late October when he came back. The trees had just started turning, the kind of burnished gold that makes even the sidewalks feel warmer. I was sitting on the porch of the lakeside house, sorting through foundation grant applications when I heard tires on gravel. Not fast, not loud, just hesitant. The car was older now, or maybe I was just seeing it clearly for the first time. Parked crooked, one tire brushing the edge of the grass. The engine cut out, and for a long time, nothing happened. Then the door opened. Evan stepped out slowly, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, hoodie pulled tight against the chill. He looked taller somehow, but thinner. Like the weight he'd lost wasn't physical. I didn't move, just watched. He stood at the bottom of the porch steps for a while, shifting from foot to foot. Then, "Grandma?" I didn't answer right away. He cleared his throat, looked up at me. "I'm sorry." I set the folder in my lap aside. "For what you said?" I asked. or for losing your comfort? His shoulders dropped. Both. He looked older now, not in years, but in awareness. His voice didn't carry the edge it used to. Just wait. Lessons cost something, I said. You're lucky you had something to pay with. I thought I was right, he said. Back then. I nodded. So did I. We sat in the quiet for a minute. The lake behind me shimmered with afternoon light. Wind pushing little ripples across the surface like slow-moving thoughts. I don't have anywhere to go, he said finally. I've been sleeping in my car, couch surfing with a friend who just moved back in with his mom. I messed up. You did, I said. But I want to fix it, he added quickly. I don't mean live here for free or... He stopped himself, his face coloring. I mean, whatever you'd ask. I'll work. I'll pay. I stood and walked down the steps until I was standing in front of him. I have a room in the back, I said. It's small, clean, warm. His eyes flicked up, cautious. There's rent, I added. He nodded. Okay. It won't be cheap, I said, but it'll be fair, and on time. Yes, ma'am. I studied his face. Still young, still recovering from the arrogance that used to prop up his posture, but something in the eyes had changed. He meant it. I turned back toward the house. Come in. You can leave your bag by the door. He followed me inside, quiet. His shoes scuffed against the old floorboards. The house smelled like rosemary and clean linen. Martha had helped me air it out that morning. I pointed to the back hallway. End of the hall. Sheets are clean. He set his bag down gently. Before disappearing down the hall, he turned. Thank you. I didn't answer, but I didn't need to. Later that night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the back deck, listening to the soft sound of drawers opening, the hum of someone learning how to be careful in a space they didn't shape. Martha texted, "How's the quiet life?" I replied, "Interrupted, but not in a bad way." She sent back a single word. "Growth?" I stared at the screen a moment, then typed, "It starts with humility." Inside, I heard the bathroom door close gently. The first time Evan had lived in my house, he acted like it owed him something. Now, every footstep said, "I know better." Evan helps her around the property, begins understanding value. The mornings got colder. Dew clung to the wooden railings. I started waking earlier, not out of habit, but because the house felt more alive when someone else's footsteps joined mine. Evan didn't sleep in. He rose with me, helped with the firewood, trimmed the brush at the edge of the dock, hauled compost without complaint. It wasn't fast work, and he didn't always know what he was doing, but he showed up, sweating, scuffed up, quiet. One morning, he asked how much the septic tank replacement had cost me last year. $6,000, I said, without looking up from my pruning. He blinked. Seriously? That's what it takes to own something. You don't just decorate it, you maintain it. He nodded like he was storing the number in a new part of his brain, one reserved for consequence. Later that week, Clara stopped by with paperwork for another grant cycle. She found us repairing a loose board on the dock, Evan holding the beam steady while I drilled. "Didn't think I'd see you swinging a hammer again," she said. "He's better at it than I expected," I replied, dusting my hands. Clara looked at him, then at me. "He's changing." "So did I said, when I realized silence can be power. We walked back toward the house and she handed me a small envelope before she left. "Certified mail," she said. "It's from Richard." I didn't open it right away. Just slipped it into the drawer by the stove and finished cleaning up from dinner. It wasn't until after Evan had gone to bed, after the house was dark and the air smelled faintly of cedar, that I unfolded the letter. It was short, apologetic in tone, not in substance. The words forgiveness and mistakes appeared. So did family. I read it twice, then wrote a reply on my own stationery. Just one line: respect first, reconciliation later. I sealed it and gave it to Clara the next morning to mail back. No anger, no explanation. Some things don't need to be torn apart to prove they're broken. They just need to be left out in the open. That weekend, the town held its annual community renewal banquet. The Blake Renewal Foundation was receiving a small recognition, an honorary plaque for sustained local impact. It wasn't the kind of thing I normally attended, but Clara insisted. So did Martha. You built this, they said. Let people thank you properly for once. I wore the navy dress I'd had for years, the one that always made me feel like I took up just the right amount of space. Evan drove me. He opened the car door without being asked. At the event, people clapped. The mayor mispronounced Harper and Wren, but I didn't correct him. There were handshakes, kind words, a buffet table with overcooked pasta and undercooked speeches. But somewhere in the middle of it, I looked around and saw a life I didn't recognize, but one I'd built anyway. Martha raised her glass to me. Clara winked from behind a podium. Even the woman from the grant letter, Sophie's aunt, was there, standing quietly near the back, mouthing, "Thank you," when our eyes met. And for once, I didn't shrink from the attention. I stood tall. Not because I needed to prove anything, but because I finally didn't. Final morning. Sunlight fills the renovated home. The house woke up with the sun. Golden light spilled across the floors, soft and warm, catching on the edge of the linen curtains. The hardwood glowed. The air smelled faintly of ground coffee and rosemary from the planter by the kitchen window. I was sitting at the breakfast table, still in my robe, feet tucked beneath me, crossword open, pen in hand. Evan walked in, already dressed. He'd started waking early on his own now. No alarm, just rhythm. He poured 2 mugs of coffee, slid one in front of me. "You really do own everything, huh?" he said with a smile, not sarcastic, just aware. "Only what I've earned," I said gently, lifting the cup. "And only because I've learned how to keep it." He nodded, not arguing, just listening. There was something in his stillness now I hadn't seen before. A respect that wasn't performative. It wasn't about earning his way back in. It was about finally understanding what it meant to belong. The doorbell rang mid-morning. Clara, right on time. She stepped inside without waiting to be invited, holding a manila folder and a soft smile. "Everything's filed," she said, setting it on the counter. "All legal matters finalized. The foundation is fully protected. The trust is untouchable. And the lake house is officially yours, in perpetuity." I flipped through the papers, scanning the clean lines and official stamps. "Good," I said. "Let peace compound." Clara raised an eyebrow. "You really are getting poetic in your old age." "I'm getting clear," I replied. "There's a difference." She stayed for tea. Evan joined us, made the second pot himself. He even offered to walk Clara out after. The small things matter more when no one asks you to do them. That afternoon, while I napped lightly in the reading chair by the front window, he posted something. I didn't see it right away, but Martha sent me the link with the caption, "You raised him right." Even if it took the long way. Evan's post read, "I used to think ownership was about having your name on something. She taught me it's about earning the right to keep it. She didn't evict me, she rescued me, and she did it without raising her voice once." Attached was a photo of the dock, Me standing at the edge of it from behind, wrapped in a shawl, still, holding a mug. By evening, the post had gone viral again, but this time it wasn't about mockery, it was about respect. People commented not just on the story, but on the posture, the presence, the quiet refusal to be erased. Later that night, Evan stood in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner. I stayed seated at the table, letting myself be still. "Do you think they'll come around?" he asked. "Maybe," I said. "But that's their business, not mine." He nodded, wiping his hands on a towel. "I think I get that now." I looked at him. Really looked. "You're not who you were." "I don't want to be." I finished the last sip of my tea, then stood, walked to the front hallway, and paused by the mirror. I'd always hated that mirror. It never quite showed me who I thought I was. But tonight, I didn't need it to. I already knew. They called me a guest once, a visitor in my own home, but I'd never been one. I was always the host, just waiting for them to check out.